Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're taking a fascinating journey straight into the cognitive science of who we actually are, and way more importantly, how we can consciously rewrite our own programming. We're exploring a framework known as deep work. And listen, we aren't talking about superficial productivity hacks here. We're talking about authentic, lasting transformation from the inside out. If you've ever felt completely stuck in a loop, trying to change your habits, your mindset, your entire life, only to find yourself right back at square one, well, you're in exactly the right place to uncover why that happens.
Think about this for a second. How many times have you literally told yourself, I'm just not motivated today? I know I have, right? But the source material hits us with a hard truth right out of the gate. It argues that we basically need to toss motivation on the trash heap of history. Why? Because the fundamental problem is that motivation is just a feeling. It's fleeting. It ebbs and flows like the tide depending on your mood, how much sleep you got last night, or what's going on around you. Sure, it might spark a fire, but it absolutely will not keep the flame burning. Relying on motivation is just a total recipe for temporary, unstable results.
Okay, let's dive into this, because the key distinction here is absolutely crucial. Motivation initiates change, sure, but transformation? That is a permanent shift. We aren't looking for trendy, fly-by-night tactics that give you a temporary burst of energy. We're looking for a genuine metamorphosis right at the core of your belief system. Transformation is this conscious refining of who you are at your very center, and it completely transcends whatever emotional state you happen to be in today. It's the difference between white-knuckling it and forcing yourself to act a certain way for a week versus fundamentally becoming a person who naturally embodies those traits for a lifetime. To really understand how we achieve that permanent shift, let's look at part 1. Your brain's secret code.
What you're about to discover is that your beliefs are not just fleeting, abstract thoughts floating around in your head. They are the actual root cause of your entire life experience. They act as these invisible forces, literally electrical and chemical impulses stored in the neural networks of your brain that totally govern your thoughts, your feelings, your choices, and ultimately your behavior. And this brings us to this incredibly groundbreaking concept in cognitive neuroscience called embodied simulation. By definition, embodied simulation means that your brain and nervous system respond to any stimuli they perceive and genuinely believe to be real. So here's the mind-bending fact of the day. The human brain literally cannot tell the difference between a real, physical experience and one it merely vividly imagines. Let that sink in. If your brain strictly believes something is happening, your body will respond physiologically and emotionally as if it's playing out right in front of you. And this brilliantly illustrates how we actually see this phenomenon everywhere in daily life. Think about the placebo effect. Patients experience real, measurable, physical healing simply because they believe they're taking a potent medicine. Or virtual reality. Your heart is pounding out of your chest looking over a digital cliff, even though logically you know for a fact you're safe in your living room. Consider mental rehearsal in sports. Athletes legitimately improve their physical performance just by visualizing their routines, which actively fires their motor cortex. Even in our dreams, right? We wake up sweating with a racing heart because in that specific moment, the brain strictly believes the dream is reality. So, what does this all mean for how we shape our world? Well, we basically live at the intersection of two distinct realities. On one hand, you have objective reality. These are the external facts, the established consensus, the hard laws of physics. But on the other side is subjective reality. This is our internal perception, the specific meanings we personally assign to events. We operate in this sort of quantum reality where these two collide. Your subjective beliefs dictate exactly how you interact with objective facts. It's like a thermostat for your behavior. Your beliefs filter what you perceive, making sure your actions perfectly match the subjective reality you've built in your own mind. This leads to such a powerful, empowering takeaway from the text. The source really hammers home this definition. Beliefs are simply subjective opinions we have about the experiences of our lives. They are not necessarily facts. Let me repeat that. They are opinions, not facts. They're just mental constructs built on the emotional residue of past experiences. They're not fixed laws of the universe. And because they're just interpretations that you created, even if you did it completely subconsciously, it means you hold the absolute power to change them. So how exactly do these simple opinions harden into our core identity? It happens along what's known as the beliefs continuum. It's this three-step subconscious process, kind of like an assembly line. First up is perception. That's where you take in information or just have an experience. Second is evaluation. This is where you assign a meaning or a judgment to that experience, which is hugely influenced by whatever emotions you're feeling at the time.
Finally, we hit belief formation. That evaluated meaning basically becomes a deeply ingrained mental shortcut, and it hardens right into your self-image. Over time, your cognitive biases lock it in, and your brain goes to work constantly hunting for evidence to prove this newly formed belief is true.
So, the big question is, how do we intentionally break this cycle? We use a practical 4-step method, starting with step 1, identify. To see how this actually plays out, let's meet Emily. She's a case study from the material of a young woman who came to a coach struggling with totally shattered self-esteem and deep depression after a really brutal divorce. She felt just completely broken, totally trapped by these invisible forces she didn't even realize were running the show in the background. During a session, Emily poured out her struggle, saying, "I just feel like I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy of happiness or love." As we look at Emily's situation, it's really worth interrogating our own inner dialogue. How often do we make a really painful negative assessment about ourselves and totally disguise it as an unchangeable fact? Because Emily's feelings of low self-esteem weren't actually the core issue. They were just symptoms pointing to the underlying limiting belief that was truly in charge.
Now, what's really interesting here is the secret trigger phrase Emily used, "I feel like." This right here is a massive analytical breakthrough. When you say "I feel like," you are exposing a deeply held limiting belief that is simply masquerading as an emotion. You know, society teaches us to completely identify with our feelings, but you are a human being who experiences feelings. You are not the feelings themselves. Catching yourself saying, "I feel like a failure," or "I feel like I'm just not smart enough," that is the exact moment you identify the specific limiting belief that needs to be dragged out into the light.
Once you've successfully pinpointed that belief, we move to step 2, reevaluate.
To shatter a limiting belief, the framework explains that we have to step back and detach hard facts from our faulty, highly emotional interpretations. See, limiting beliefs are usually born in these super intense emotional moments where we basically generalize the negative event just to protect ourselves from future pain. So, reevaluating means holding that belief up to the harsh light of scrutiny. It's using cold, hard logic to ask, hey, what other possible meanings could that past experience have actually had? Look at how Emily logically redefined her past. Her ex-husband was constantly criticizing her. Originally, she evaluated that to mean she was totally worthless, but when she challenged it logically, she found entirely different meanings. Actually, scratch that. Maybe he was just profoundly unhappy with himself and projecting it onto her. Maybe he had completely unrealistic expectations, or hey, maybe they were just simply incompatible. She suddenly realized his negligent behavior was absolutely not proof of her unworthiness. It was just a reflection of his own inner baggage. She saw that she had unintentionally chosen a meaning that was destroying her self-image when there were so many other perfectly logical meanings sitting right there.
Let's move on and see how this builds into the final phases. Steps 3 and 4, deconstruct and reconstruct. This is the really exciting part where we go way beyond just positive thinking and literally physically rewire the brain to install a brand new empowering self-image. Deconstruction is the act of tearing down that old belief at the neural level, and reconstruction is deliberately building and hardwiring the new one. This happens through a very real physiological process called neurological pruning. Think of it exactly like a gardener snipping away dead branches to keep a plant healthy. When you actively stop giving your attention, your emotional energy, and your validation to those old limiting beliefs, your brain literally starts to sever the synaptic connections in those unused neural networks. By leaning heavily on logical reasoning and cutting off the emotional food supply to the old belief, you are physically deconstructing its grip on your brain. So, let's map out the complete 4-step belief transformation method. Think of it as the definitive cure to our subconscious struggles. First, you identify the limiting belief hiding in your self-talk. Second, you reevaluate the meaning of those past experiences using pure logic. Third, you deconstruct the old neural pathways by pulling away your energy. And fourth, you reconstruct by consciously choosing a brand new, empowering belief. This method isn't just a band-aid. The source presents it as the foundational strategy for entirely rewriting our subconscious programming.
So the absolutely crucial point is how you handle that final step of reconstruction. The secret sauce is immersion. Immersion means completely and totally saturating both your conscious and subconscious mind with the new belief to supercharge neuroplasticity. How do you do it? Daily visualization. Vividly imagining and emotionally feeling exactly what it's like to be this new version of yourself. You use affirmations to consciously rewrite that inner dialogue. And you immerse yourself in positive environments, reading the right books, taking courses, and surrounding yourself with people who naturally reinforce this new reality. You're basically hardwiring the new belief into your subconscious until it's just an automatic, natural reflex.
And guess what? Through this relentless process of immersion, Emily successfully adopted a newly reconstructed self-image. She began affirming a powerful new belief: I am good enough and I will be good enough for the right person. Within just a matter of weeks, she reported this massive shift. Her calm, her energy, her entire confidence totally transformed. That old toxic belief just withered away, and the new one became her physiological and emotional reality. The biggest takeaway here is that you possess the exact same conscious power to completely redefine your own reality from the inside out.
Because your beliefs dictate your outcomes, and because you have the absolute, undeniable power to consciously choose those beliefs, you are the active architect of your entire life. Which leaves us with one final, pretty profound thought to close out our time together today. If your brain genuinely, literally cannot tell the difference between reality and imagination, what reality will you choose to vividly imagine today? It's time to start doing the deep work.